What is going on everyone, and welcome back to another video on the channel. And in today's video will be my round 10 AFL tips of the 2023 season. Last week I did get 6 out of 9, got Geelong wrong, and I got Gold Coast right, Sydney wrong. Sydney, I don't know what they're doing, man. I know they have a lot of injuries, but their midfield is just getting smacked week after week, and their forward line isn't going well. And their backline's falling apart without Paddy, Tom and Rampy. And I got Port Adelaide right, geez, they thumped North, Melbourne right, Brisbane right. I was going to tip the Bulldogs, but then I was leaning towards Carlton, but that was probably a mistake, as the Bulldogs were just too classy in the end, and that was a brilliant last quarter to watch. Adelaide thumped St Kilda, they look very impressive, and Collingwood smacked the Giants. Alright, first game of round 10 is between Port Adelaide and Melbourne. Finally, a pretty decent Friday night clash. Who would have thought Port Adelaide will be doing this well, as they're sitting 4th on the ladder with 7 wins and 2 losses. That is a fantastic start. They were 1 and 2 Port, and now they've just won 6 in a row, so they're in really good form. Their ability to win close games is really a highlight and standout as well. Melbourne were pretty good over Hawthorn. They did what they needed to do. They smashed them, and they were clearly the better team. It's a very tough game to tip here. I'm going to say Port win this game by 4 points in an absolute thriller. And then moving on to Marvel Stadium, North Melbourne versus Sydney. This game does scare me. Luckily for me, North have some key players out like Zerha and Simpkin, or it was someone else. I don't think it is Simpkin, but they're going to have a few out. I think Core is going to be suspended. But Sydney, of course, have probably the worst injuries in the competition if you look at the names that are out. Rampy, Paddy McCartan, Tom McCartan. Sam Reid is such a crucial player for us, and Hickey's out of form, and yeah, it's just not looking good for us at the moment. But in saying that, we're playing North Melbourne, who just lost to 70 points against Port Adelaide. North Melbourne will probably bring their best just because they're playing us, but I reckon Sydney will ultimately be too good and will win this game by 35 points. And then moving on to the Western Bulldogs versus Adelaide. Bulldogs in very good form with a sharp performance against Carlton. They looked very electric. And Adelaide, of course, with a fantastic win over St Kilda. They really look like a final side, even though they're only sitting in 8th position. Honestly, I'm sensing an upset here. Adelaide won down here last year, and I reckon they'll do it again. I reckon Adelaide will win this game by 8 points and will catch the Dogs off guard. And then at Optus Stadium, Fremantle versus Geelong. Fremantle with a very impressive win over Sydney. Their structure just looked way more strong compared to the Swans, and they were really the better team for the whole match and played a really good game of footy. Geelong, on the other hand, were very disappointed against Richmond. They just looked a bit flat, and they just couldn't play how they wanted to play, and Richmond just were too good, and it probably catched them a bit off guard that Richmond were going to show up and play this well, and Geelong just looked flat. Look, even though Fremantle will probably come into this game with a lot of confidence over their win against Sydney, I reckon Geelong will actually respond well here and will win this game by 28 points. And then moving on to the Gabba, probably one of the more interesting games between these two sides in Queensland. Brisbane versus Gold Coast. Brisbane looking very sharp and look like a top 4 team, and Gold Coast really looks like they can challenge for the top 8. They're playing some really good footy, had a great win over West Coast. Look, even though I wouldn't write off Gold Coast, it's hard to go past Brisbane at home here. They played good against Essendon last week, and I reckon it'll be close though. I reckon Brisbane will win by 13 points in a fantastic match. And then Essendon versus Richmond at the MCG. This is actually a very tough game to tip, especially because Richmond just bet Geelong at the MCG, and Essendon, they're going through a bit of a patch where they're losing games, but they're still competitive here and there. There's patches of good footy, but there's patches of not good footy, and to be fair, they have played some pretty damn good teams like Brisbane and Geelong. I'm going to back in Essendon here. I'm not confident with this tip at all. It could go either way, but stuff it. I'm just going to go Essendon here in a bit of a coin flip. I reckon they'll win this game by 8 points. And then Hawthorn versus West Coast. Because this game is in Tasmania, I'm pretty sure I'm going to tip Hawthorn. They are a fantastic Tassie team. They actually played pretty well down there, and I reckon they're way too strong for West Coast here, and will run away and win this game by 40 points. And then the big one, Carlton versus Collingwood at the MCG on the Sunday. Look, Carlton, if they get done here, I would almost write them off for finals just because of the way they've been playing. They don't look promising at all. They look very slow to move the ball, and it just looks like they're not playing with enough freedom, and they just, yeah, something's just off at Carlton at the moment. Even last year, like, they were a bloody good team to miss finals, but this year they're not really playing well at all. it looks like they're just a bit unconfident and they really just need to make the finals for one season. But I don't think they will, to be honest, anymore. And they're playing Collingwood, who are clearly the best team in the competition at the moment. 8 wins and 1 loss. They're playing good footy and they don't even have to play well. They can just get smacked in every stat of the game and they'll still bloody whoop your ass, like against Sydney, when Sydney like almost won every stat, but Collingwood just did them in the last quarter. But anyway, I reckon Collingwood will be too strong here and will win this game by 25 points. And then final game of round 10, Giants versus St Kilda at Giants Stadium. This is an interesting one just because of how bad St Kilda played last week. They'll definitely be looking to respond, and Giants, I guess they were a bit disappointed, but it's against Collingwood, so there's no real expectation on them to do well in that match. I reckon, like every week, Giants will be very competitive, but ultimately St Kilda will get the job done by 15 points in a close match. And there you go, guys, those are my round 10 AFL tips. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a big fat thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.